Good afternoon. I'm Susan Arnett. I'm a criminal defense lawyer retired from the Public Defender's Office in Honolulu, where I also teach at the University of Hawaii Law School. And I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon.
It's nice to meet you.
That's good. I guess evening for you guys, right? Now it's still afternoon for me. Hi, my name is Anthony Miller. I am a alumni of the program, as well as a former coordinator. I spent about 10 years working as a coach and helping to organize the competitions in my home state of Nevada. And this is my first year as a judge at the national competition. So I'm really excited to be here and hear what you guys have for us today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So my name's Andy Levy. I'm a trial lawyer from Baltimore, Maryland, and I also teach at both of Maryland's law schools, the University of Maryland and the University of Baltimore.
Good to meet you.
So if you would introduce yourselves and your teacher.
So I'm Seth White. I'm a senior here at Green River High School.
I'm Abby Atkinson. I'm also a senior.
And I'm James King I'm a senior as well at Green River High School, and Mr. Cox is back there. He's our teacher as well.
Out of curiosity, with you guys saying that, is there anyone who's not a senior on your team in any of the other units? Okay, yeah, that's how it usually goes, I thought. So.
Yeah, okay. We weren't sure how it worked nationwide. Awesome. It's good to know.
Well, I will read question 4 of question 1 of unit 4, although I'm sure you're very familiar with it. Begins with a quote from Rufus King. It would be inconsistent with the constitutional separation of the executive and legislative powers to let the prerogative, pardon power, be exercised by the latter. What were the framers' reasons for giving the president the pardon power, and do you agree or disagree with them? According to the framer James Wilson, if the president abuses the pardon power, he can be impeached and prosecuted. Do you agree with Wilson? Why or why not? In your opinion, what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors? Please begin.
After escaping what the founding fathers perceived as a tyrannical government, the creators of the Constitution sought to never put its citizens in the same predicament.
In order to avoid the abuse of power by any aspect of this newfound government, the authors of this foundational document ensured a myriad of powers that corroborated the integrity of this nation, one of which was the presidential power to pardon in Article 2, Section 2. The power to pardon that the United States president possesses is derived from a deeply rooted belief that corruption was imminent by any body of government.
This fear of corruption had to be accounted for due to this foundation previously set by state constitutions such as Article 19 in Georgia's Constitution or the Constitution of Delaware. It was only logical that this fear would cause the founding document to include restraints on the largest branch of our government, Congress. The pliable and loosely restrained legislative branch would justify Madison's assertion in Federalist 48, quote, "It will not be denied that power is of an encroaching nature, and that it ought to be effectively restrained from passing the limits assigned to it," end quote.
Without the constitutional check that the executive branch has over the legislative, misconduct will grow more likely each and every day. The power to pardon is needed to balance the government in the ever-changing political and social climate of the United States that is defined by the volatile legislative branch.
Our framers envisioned the president having an absolute check against the lawmaking power of Congress as a safety valve in case they did ever overextend their authority.
This enumerated power to pardon exhibited by the president is a necessary check, but like anything else, it can be abused and misused. So when James Wilson asserted that the president can be impeached and prosecuted for this, he is solidifying one of the fundamental checks that the legislative branch has on the president. Article 1, Section 3 distinctly gives Congress the responsibility to hold the executive branch accountable and to the standard of integrity and transparency that the American people deserve.
We agree with the statement made by James Wilson because one of the rudimentary functions of the Constitution, regardless of which of the three branches' powers, is to inhibit the other two branches' overreach. The separation of powers is perfectly demonstrated in the case Clinton v. New York City. The executive branch, Clinton, granted the president a power that would directly impede upon the lawmaking powers of Congress. The ability for him to choose and pick parts of bills that could be passed would violate the presentment clause in Article 1 and break the natural order of our government.
This would throw a wrench in the process of creating laws as a whole. Similarly, if the executive branch uses its presidential power to pardon and manages to infringe on the Constitution or drives an agenda that exceeds their limits, then they will and should be held to the same standards as the presidents have in the past.
So, if the legislative and judicial branches are hindered from impeaching or prosecuting the president, then one of the principal objectives of the Constitution will be violated.
The heinous action of high crime or misdemeanor should be constituted as something that directly and indirectly threatens the American people.
Article 2, Section 4 states that, quote, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors.
Does this mean that if the president were to jaywalk, he should be impeached? No, this would be nonsensical. We believe that anyone who abuses the power of the public mind, who acts for self-interest while putting citizens in jeopardy, or breaches the fundamental duties of offices should be subject to high crime and thus be impeached.
To sum it up, a high crime and misdemeanor should be defined as anything that an elected official does to break their sacred oath of office. The government we have formed is by the people, for the people. Therefore, it is up to the American people as a majority to determine when an elected official is in the wrong. The only way anything that has ever been accomplished in this country has been done by popular demand, whether it be the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, or mass approval of marijuana. It is up to us, the people, to determine what we see as just.
Thank you. You speak of the pardon power, if I understand correctly, as in part to limit the other two branches of government from overreaching. And I'm wondering whether you think there should be limits on the president's use of the pardon power other than simply that he or she is subject to impeachment. And I'm thinking of examples of, presidents who have pardoned family members or political cronies, political supporters, maybe people who've contributed to their campaigns, and that sort of thing, which we've seen over many administrations. Do you think there should be limits beyond the power to impeach?
Like anything else, there is a proper way to use the power to impeach, the power to pardon, and improper ways. The way we see fit to use the power to pardon is to counteract unjust legislation. So like we said within our answers, if legislation passes a law that is deemed to be unjust, and we can see that happening more and more, bipartisanship is going to form our government the next couple of years. And if the American people believe that something is going to be wrong with this law, then the president represents the views of the American people. And by popular demand, the person that was unjustly imprisoned or prosecuted should be freed.
When we look at former President Donald Trump, he on his last days in office pardoned social icons to better his view as after his time in office. And like James mentioned, we feel like this power should only be used for unjust legislation and not as any way to gain favors or to increase their popularity.
And in saying that, if a president were to pardon, let's say, a family member, that should only be allowed if they were convicted unjustly.
And then it's up to the legislation as well to view if the president did use his power unjustly.
I just want to quickly follow up. So when President Obama pardoned, a few hundred people who had been convicted of sort of essentially low-level drug crimes and sentenced to prison, and they were able to demonstrate that it had been racially applied in a way that didn't seem to be equal. What about those who would say that is not the solution to this problem? Those people violated the law, and in order to protect our community from drugs, they need to suffer the consequences of that. Who would make the determination that it was to counteract unjust legislation?
We believe it's, once again, it was a great example you pulled up with President Obama and pardoning those people. We believe by him pardoning these people, he's pointing attention to something that he believes is wrong and that the American people ought to know about. And that by pardoning these people, he's saying that, these crimes for low level, these convictions for low-level drug crimes shouldn't be here. And I believe it's more of a rallying call to the American people to hold their representatives accountable. And if the American people can get behind what President Obama did, then they will send the people that made these legislations out of office and vote people in that they believe can actually make a change for crimes such as these.
And like you said, when you asked your question, it was believed that these people were convicted unjustly due to racial discrimination. So in that pardoning, he saw that he was doing them not necessarily a favor, but pardoning them because they were convicted unjustly.
But aren't you, I mean, you are trying to impose on an inherently political process some idealized notion of the way, you know, our democracy is supposed to work that it never has. And the presidency is an inherently political office. Congress is a political body. The reason these people were convicted and sentenced to long prison sentences in the first place was that the very legislature that you think is going to, you know, rally the people passed laws that in retrospect look draconian. So you're going to need to explain to me again, how does this work?
Can you repeat that last part? Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just don't, I just think my impression is that your solution is totally unrealistic and at odds with everything we know about the way politics has always worked. And so, I mean, I guess what would you say to a criticism like that?
Sorry, like he couldn't hear you. I'm sorry, but so to a criticism of that, we have to be able to like make democracy the way it's intended. We have to hold bipartisanship accountable. And the only way is to make our representatives grow. I mean, we can put systems in place that will help represent the people more intently. So for instance, like right now we have the, instead of, what is it? Oh my God, I have it. But we could do popular elections instead of our, sorry, it's not coming to
Electoral
college. Yeah, sorry. I just forgot about it.
You're too young for a senior moment, so.
Yeah.
We understand that our solution is very idealistic and, like you said, a little bit unreasonable. However, we do believe that it is possible.
God bless you.
I'm still not completely sure what your solution is. And we only have 1 minute left. So I would like you to try to be a little bit more discreet about how you would propose this should work. You've kind of articulated your opinions of what is improper and proper use of the pardon, but it seems so far that your belief is that the limitation should be determined basically by your opinion, by public opinion. How do we codify that? How do we create processes and systems that actually enforce this? So you said that, well, Trump's pardons to gain political favor with celebrities was an improper use of pardons. Well, what should have been done? Who should have done something about this?
I think that could be held to the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court they owe no one any favors. They're not voted into office. And of course, they are some of the most intelligent people in America. I feel like they should be the ones who decide whether the president made the right decision or whether his choice to pardon the people was unjust.
The Supreme Court historically is.
If you have something important to say really quick, go ahead and finish up.
Yeah, but so we believe there should be a check on the presidential power to pardon. And by doing this, like what Seth was saying, it could be executed by the Supreme Court, which is historically an apolitical branch until recently, but people are debating. But,
well, that's up for debate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you guys. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely up for debate if the Supreme Court has always been kind of political or when that shift started to happen. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that you were all participating, which indicates that you've all been immersing yourselves in this issue and discussing it, and that you were also wanting to make sure you weren't jumping on each other, giving each other a chance to respond. That's important, and not every team does that. I liked your initial presentation, and that you began by styling it as the overall desire of the framers of the Constitution in every respect was to avoid the tyranny of government that they felt they were freeing themselves from by forming a new country. I think your approach is idealistic, but I like that you said that doesn't mean it's not possible, and shouldn't, and essentially we're arguing that it shouldn't be doesn't mean it shouldn't be aspired to. Mm-hmm. So you may need some more concrete examples of how you would go about doing that, but you mentioned that some of it is in the electorate, who they vote for in and out as these things happen. So good on you for that.
Yeah. So I feel like I should apologize. I didn't mean to throw you like a total curveball. I think I caught you a little flat-footed. But it was, my question was a genuine, which is, it's a great. You guys, you're absolutely right. It should work better than it does, but it's a mess. It's a messy system, and if men were angels, right, we wouldn't need any of this. As far as the Supreme Court goes, this is pardon power is primarily supposed to be a check on the judiciary. So I'm not sure that putting the fox in charge of making sure that the chicken coop is run correctly is necessarily the right. But I no way was intending to patronize or to disparage the ideas you had. It was more just sort of a sincere, you guys have been watching and listening the past few years, right? So it's not working the way it's supposed to in the textbook, but I loved listening to you guys. I thought you were very thoughtful. The discussion about the presentment clause was very erudite, showed a lot of knowledge and understanding. So I have renewed faith. I'm absolutely sincere about this. I have renewed faith in the future of my country after spending even a few minutes with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you guys did a wonderful job, and I want to mimic everything that was said by my colleagues, but I don't want to put words in Andrew's mouth here, but I do want to extrapolate on that I think that the frustration or the difficulty that I was having, and I think Andrew was having also, was that we got a really good picture of your ideal or your idea of what is and isn't an appropriate use of the pardon, but that doesn't matter if there's not a good way to implement it, right? Everyone has an opinion. And in fact, your opinion may be completely hated by society in 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, right? Like there's lots of things that we look back in American history and say, what the heck were we thinking, right? So what's more important is putting in place systems that work logistically, that understand the nuance of human error, that understand that all of the three branches of government are affected by not just public opinion, not just politics, but by individual human beings' desire to create more power for themselves, right? We need to put in place processes that account for those things. And I think that you guys have some work to do on trying to figure out a better proposal for how these ideals that you have very adequately stated what you would like to see the outcome be. But I'd like to see some more thought and discussion on how we could make that a possible future. And I think that I hope the world goes the way that you guys wanted to. I agree with you. I hope that we can find ways to do this. And it's obvious that we have some problems right now. There's some serious issues, and that not just with the pardon power, with lots and lots of things in our government. And I think what the next generation needs to be working on is figuring out how to create not just shouting in the streets and rioting and protesting and saying, well, we're going to change public opinion and people are going to vote differently. That's only worked to some extent so far. we need to figure out how can we put in place institutions that solve these problems. And I really hope that your generation is able to solve it better than we have in the past.
Yes, sir.
Here, here.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.